Welcome to a very crucial conversation today. I'm so delighted to have you, Gauri. So, hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been so many years now. I've known you from high school your high school years, then go to college, and you were one of the few students who always stayed in touch. So delighted to also reconnect after your grad school now almost completing, and wonderful things that you're doing back in India with your mom's business, and how do you want to take it as a second generation going forward, and of course many more opportunities that you see in India.
Yeah.
So why don't you walk us through maybe the idea of what is your family business or your mom's business in particular, and how did you make that decision to participate in an intergenerational setup?
Yeah, sure. So, my mom and dad actually started this business in 2011. It was called Fabuloso, and the idea was to have a platform with various different like homegrown designers because there was no way to get exposure for them back then. But I think slowly along the way, that idea changed a little bit, and now I think about 5, 6 years ago, my mom just kind of took over. The website was shut down, and it was just her offering designing and stitching services. And then I think someone advised her on maybe releasing a collection. And those started doing really well. She would just, show it at our home and she would get lots of clients and it was a hit. And, she would ask me for advice on how to advertise on Instagram. And so I was just like helping her with that. I was living abroad
Then
at the
also,
time.
your background was in this, right? You were working in
Exactly.
LA for a few years in this field of marketing.
Yeah, so I was working at a PR agency where we had exposure to like social clients as well. So, based on my experience, I would help her and, give her advice on images. Sometimes I would tell my friends to go shoot for her and stuff. So it was all very homegrown, very like mom and pop style. And then I just realized that there's so much potential with what she's doing. People love her designs. They're extremely loyal, and everything had been really organic growth, word of mouth, no paid advertising, nothing like that. And I was like, I just need to help her kind of package this up well, present it well. And, she just does what she does. Like, a lot of people struggle with having a good product. And I think for us, we were lucky that the so called product was already good. And it was just about kind of how you communicate that product to the world and just bringing awareness to it. So I think that was something that really attracted me. And I was honestly like, I felt I had reached a little bit of a plateau in how much I was learning at my current role. And yeah, so I just wanted to kind of do something a little bit more challenging.
And India has obviously challenges really
Yeah.
at every step, literally.
Yeah.
So when you look at coming back after so many years in the West and living here once again, what are the adjustments you had to make in terms of your social as well as living lifestyle, so to speak? And what are the pros and cons you felt people in your generation who are thinking of coming back should know of?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that India is a lot more family oriented and you have a lot more family commitments. So I would say when I was abroad, it was really easy for me to just plan like my entire week just with like friends' obligations because I really didn't have much family there. Maybe once a month I would go see a distant cousin. So it was really nice. And in New York, when I was living, we were like walking distance from each other. So at 2 a.m., I would be like, oh, I'm really bored. Like, if you're up, I'll come over. So I really do miss that about living in India because the safety aspect comes in as well. Like, you don't want to be traveling at 2 a.m. on a Gurgaon road or, taking an Uber alone. Whereas, the US, even in London, taking Ubers alone at night was something I was fine with and it felt safe to me. And so I think that independence aspect I really do miss, like, needing a car for everything, no walkability. So those I would say are some of the cons and just, missing being with friends all the time. It does feel like the end of an era, I feel a lot more like I've pivoted from my young adult life to like my grown up life. Yeah, but not to say there aren't a lot of pros. Like I'm, spending so much time with my family, and I love working with my mom, and we have a really good understanding with each other. So I think the pros are definitely there, and just connecting with all my like high school friends and being here for big milestones like weddings and baby showers. And people who are abroad have to miss out on so much of that, and it's such a sacrifice. And taking PTOs and just expensive flights. So being there for all those milestones is something that's really nice to have. Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, talking about your mom and your relationship in the family business. So, of course, you were trained to be in a corporate environment,
Yes.
PR, and everything else. And now you have a boss and a mom. How does that work? Like, how did you adjust in the first few months, weeks, and what do people need to know about dynamic of kind of a mixed relationships where you have two relationships merging in one?
I think in the beginning, it was definitely a big adjustment because, like you said, coming from a corporate environment, I'm used to a lot of structure, like, scheduled meetings, agendas, notes, just like very much like organized data for everything. Like for clients, for example, here we would have like maybe a client sheet of their likes, dislikes, preferences. And I think I very quickly learned that implementing systems like that here is a lot harder, and people are a lot more resistant to things like that. And technology also isn't really being used, at least in my workplace. That's something I've been working on. Like we launched our website recently, and we shifted from like Excel invoicing to Zoho, for example. So just making those little changes to becoming more professional. But I would say it's very little, very slowly is what I've felt. Like changes take a lot of time, and that is, I think, also a result of my mom's working style. She does take long to take decisions. She wants to go through every pro and con, which at times of course is super helpful, but at times it can be frustrating. So I think adjusting to working in India as a whole, and then also adjusting to working with someone like my mom, who's creative. She's a designer. She's a little bit all over the place, whereas I'm extremely structured. So um, those were some of the challenges I faced. But yeah, working in India as a whole is very, very different from working abroad, I would say. Even when you're talking to vendors, and, people just don't get things done unless you're like super firm. So yeah, things like that, I would say, some
Wow.
examples.
That's that's great. But you also, use your Western hat, so to speak, to discuss vision, mission, values, priorities, goal setting, problem solving frameworks, all of that with your mother while sort of engaging in the initial days, or you just went with the flow, absorbing what she does and just be by her side and pick things up from whatever she
I
needs to.
think I think initially it was a lot more like absorbing and asking questions and kind of understanding how the business works, because like I said, it's been around for so long that even making any changes meant I had to work backwards, which was, I think, a lot harder than starting something from scratch. But like you said, in terms of using my Western hat for things, I think we actually rebranded from the name Fabuloso to Shukra. So in that in itself was a huge like brand building exercise. So my mom and I sat down, and we, you know, did a bunch of Q&A about what Shukra stands for, what, we would want people to know the brand for, what are some words we like to use to describe Shukra. So that's something I had learned to do when I was working with new clients at my PR agency, just like a full list of, how they want to like talk about the brand, what they want the brand to be known for, etc. So I think that is like one example of something I did. And then
Let's pause here because just changing the name and having a buy-in is a big thing, especially when a name is already so well established. So, of course, Shukra in for people who are non-native, in Indic languages, it's from Shukrana or gratitude, right? Or is that
Yeah, that's one take, and the other one is it's the planet Venus in Hindi, so it's like it signifies
Shukra?
beauty,
Mhm.
grace and things like that. So it worked really well for what we were kind
Okay,
of.
that's good to know. So it's got a two meanings, and definitely one very celestial planet,
Yeah,
which is known for grace and beauty, and the other is gratitude for good things. Grace comes from having gratitude.
yeah,
So I guess that's one way to put it. So yes, that's one unique way of sort of hitting the ground running with new purpose and a new name. What do you think were the emotional baggages or inheritance, like, you know, uh, second generation needs to sort of deal with, while, like you mentioned, that you have mom's nature is artistic, independent. Other than that, like, is there any emotional inheritance that helps the relationship, or at times even stems growth in a relationship in a business setting?
yeah. I think there's both. Honestly, the issue is that we both are so familiar with each other that in a typical boss and like director, for example, relationship, the director wouldn't really be like, oh, I completely disagree with this, or I think you're wrong. But because I'm so comfortable with her, it's easier for me to kind of point that out. And maybe that doesn't work so well, it can lead to arguments and things. So I would say that's not great. But on the flip side, if we have something to do that's work related, we can even do it at home. Like we can do it in the car, like on the way to work, on the way back from work, on vacation. Like we can always talk about work wherever we are. And I think that's a gift because both of us are so motivated to make this work that I would say that's a pro. But like I said, it can also be a con. Um, yeah, I think the familiarity issue can helps with both basically.
Fantastic. I'm actually going to circle back to the idea of working together and working on a crucial aspect of rebranding an
Yeah.
old successful brand, and also then linking it to the future. Kind of a lot of introspection goes into making those changes. What are the realizations that you had about family culture that you're building together, or the legacy beyond wealth, or what is real wealth? What is inner fulfillment as a small business which is growing rapidly now to the world and to yourself? How would you say all of this ties in well with your intra relationship with your family while growing this business together, and the culture and legacy that you think you all are setting up for the future?
That is a very good question. It's not something I've thought about deeply. I think um it's hard to, like, I've struggled with this as well, but it's hard to think beyond your everyday struggles when you're such a small company. But now that you've brought it up, I think what inspired me to join was that my mom is creative and she's good at what she's doing, and I wanted the world to see that and kind of enjoy that. So I think for me, like real wealth or like a big win would be having this brand grow and not need her necessarily to be there because she is old and she will retire at some point. She's not going to be working forever.
Don't
But
let her know that she's old.
no, I really don't. She keeps bringing it up herself, and I'm
Okay,
like,
she
this
does.
horrible. Like, please don't even talk about leaving. Like, what would we do? So I need to kind of remove that dependency and have it be something beyond her, right? Like right now, she's the business. We need it to be a business outside of her. Like if she leaves tomorrow, it needs to keep functioning. And that's what I keep telling her. And that's also been hard because for so many years, she's been like centralized decision making. And to let a little bit of that control go and to cede that to someone else has also been a struggle. But I think I would consider that a win, that she can go on holiday and not check her phone and things are going smoothly at work. So that's something I would really consider a win.
Fantastic. On the other hand, there's this intergenerational wisdom exchange as well as transfer, right? So what is it that you would want to gain from her that wisdom transfer, when would you say is complete?
I think a lot of that wisdom transfer is inherent to her because one, I think she has a very good intuition about things and people. And I think that is just innate to who she is. But also, I think her experience comes very much in handy because obviously she's worked in India longer, she's worked in this business longer. So, both of those things I would want from her, but one comes with time and one just is like the intuition. So, but I've learned to trust my own instinct more, and I give that credit to her because she tells me this doesn't feel right, or I don't think we should go ahead with this, or double check this, and initially I would think, you know, like it's not a big deal, it's fine. But a lot of the time she turned out to be right. So in turn, I've started trusting my own instinct a little bit more. And then just, I think the third thing would be she has so much technical knowledge, even though she doesn't have a fashion background. That's something she learned on the job. And that's something I really admire. She didn't take any courses or anything. She literally just learned on the job from the masters and the karigars and, going to fabric shops and material shops. And people underestimate how much knowledge that is. So that's something I would love to learn from her as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Gauri. It's always great to reconnect, especially when I hear such stories of enterprise, especially in family business settings. Is That's where the future of India is. It's always been actually this generational knowledge which creates this legacy of crafts and skills and products. So kudos to your mom and daughter team at
Thank
Shukra.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.